Today I'm here to do my first gameplay breakdown of a game of Evercore Heroes that I played recently. This is a solo queue game where I'm with 3 people that I am not in direct communication with, so being able to plan a route can be a little bit difficult. We plan a general route where we want to get some loom and some items to sell, and then we're on our way to do the start. Now I've covered the start in more detail in another video that I can link to in the description, but in general we're sending 2 people each way, and honestly I'm very impressed that this strategy even happened in a solo queue game. It's not usually something that I see, but I take the wins that I can get, and off to the races we go. Now, something that I do want to touch on here is for Lotus, who is the champion that I'm using this game, I am starting the game with my Q ability, which is the damage. And that can be a little bit weird to consider because there's no healing on the Q. But you're going to be able to clear that first camp a lot faster if you opt into the Q rather than the W, and by the time you actually need to heal someone, you're going to be level 2 or level 3 and then have access to everything. Now there's a little bit of a hiccup here where none of us pick up the gold coins, so I'm going to go back, get the coins, and then it's off to town to start farming, and we of course want to go get our teleporter online and then go up and start doing the objectives. So that's going to be our basic form here. Let's skip ahead. So as we go through town here, I'm basically going to call out that the Zari is going to be our soloer since they're off and going independent anyway. And even though we don't have a tank directly, I actually think that Lotus can kind of tank at least some of the small packs just due to all the self-sustain that Lotus does have. And especially if you can trust your DPS to not get hit by every ability that comes out. Now this is a dicey pull. You can see here that everything kind of got pulled at once, and without a tank to control everything, this could go out of control very fast. But what I want to highlight here is something special with Lotus. If we go back to this point here, you can see that Lotus, when you jump, does have immunity to damage, but they don't have immunity to crowd control. So I dash in, I take the stun, but I don't take the damage associated with that roll that leads to the stun. And we'll clear this no problem and move on towards our teleporter. We're actually going to send Kane towards the teleporter independently so that me and Shade can go and start the next objective and start farming out towards that way just to maximize our time. So this is the red gauntlet. This means it's going to give us an item when we complete. When I looked and scouted this out, it's going to be giving us access to Energize, which is an attack speed based item. Energize on its own isn't the best item, but I honestly like it on a lot of characters, Lotus included, just because the extra attack speed is going to increase the amount of auto attacks I do and therefore the amount of healing that goes out to everything that has a seed of life on it. Now it is during this gauntlet that I will note, like you will see as our team goes in and out of this objective, how these little lines are lighting up on the sides. That dictates how many people are actively making progress towards it. The shade is making me a little nervous being that close to the edge, but you know, we move on and we keep them topped up and we'll complete this in short order. So now with that cleared, the next thing that I'd like to get done before we move on would be the gold horn and the top teleporter. If we could do those 2 things before the loom rush, I'd consider this a good first phase, which is why I'm going to start pinging out like what in general I want to do. I think we go gold horn, teleporter, and then towards whatever event is necessary. So we're going to start that up, and now the gold horn, despite the fact that it is nerfed, is still a useful objective. Basically, you go around and you want to kill as many things as possible, and as you kill those things, that'll dictate how big of a reward you get at the end. So what's interesting about this particular horn is we did pull in the Yeti. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Yeti is one of the most annoying enemies in the entire game. Just kind of runs around, is hard to lock down, and does a fair bit of damage. But overall, you can see the team is properly ignoring the Yeti and just trying to farm up all of the small guys so that we can maximize our reward, albeit it'll probably be small off of this gold horn here. So we can see here all of those rock-based enemies despawn, and we got 524 gold. For a 3-man doing this relatively early, it could have been worse, but it could have been better. Overall, I'll accept the 500 gold and we'll move on our merry way. We can see here we have about a minute before the loom rush starts. Most people would try to walk down directly to the objective and be scared, but we're going to go and we're going to clear out the teleporter and the mobs towards the teleporter before we go and do that objective, just because the teleporter is going to allow us to get there faster, and we're going to clear off more of the map. Clearing the map is the best way for you to get experience, and experience wins you games. And this is what I mean about Lotus kind of being a pseudo tank. All of these things on their own do not do a lot of damage, and Lotus can just pop the W ability and heal through pretty much everything that's happening. But we're going to quickly clear out this teleporter, and then we'll teleport over and do that objective. We can see on our map that our solo Zari is already on their way. They're going to clear out a bounty and be there for it as well, which is good. It's honestly great. As we head into first Loom Rush, I will talk a little bit about game state. We can see here that we are currently in 4th with 90 core health, but honestly, it's a solo queue game. I know that if our team executes a strategy around the objective, we will be fine to defend our core, and we're moving into our shifting stones, I believe it's called. So with shifting stones, you can see here that I am standing on something that is lit up to be pink. There are 2 of these 5 stones that are lit up to be pink, and as long as one person on our team is standing on each of them, we are going to make progress, which is tracked on that top bar. Now, every now and again, these things are going to switch, and we're going to need to move as fast as we can to make sure that we keep coverage. So what's interesting is you can see that if there's only 1 stone covered, we are going to stay directly even. If 2 stones are covered, we're going to move up on the progress bar, but if no stones are covered, we're going to move down on the progress bar. So that's why it's very important for you to pivot around very fast. And you can see here that the team's doing a pretty good job of keeping the enemies at bay. We do have someone getting a little low here. The Zari's still out solo farming. They're gonna solo farm out a Crucible, which is pretty huge. And we're just going to basically keep on top of this objective and make sure that we get everything that we need. It looks like we're in place to get this first here, and that's going to give us 50 core health, which is going to put us back in major contention. You can see we jump from 4th to 2nd just by making sure we execute on the Loom Rush properly. So now at this point, I did take Energize, which could go to the Zari if they were interested, so I'm just gonna make sure they don't want it, and we'll see what they say. But looking towards my build, I have 4,400 gold and a bounty voucher. The big things here that I want is my smite, some attack speed, and some power. On top of that, I wasn't really sure what else to build here, but I will say I make a pretty bad error. I buy another smite, not realizing I already had it, and there's no undo button, so I'm stuck with that. But smite is actually a really killer item. That true damage is nice on pretty much any character, so I'll just drop it in case someone else hasn't bought theirs yet, or at the very least, someone who's not the support can take that to sell. Now overall, we're going into our first defense phase here. There's 3 spawn points. One of the spawn points has 2 portals. I'm going to mostly be helping the person who has the 2 portals here, and we're going to kind of just flex back and forth. If I notice that someone's health is getting low, I'm going to abandon the shade in order to make sure that we keep everyone topped up and covered. The Kane's doing a good job on the right side, the Zari's covering our top, and then me and the shade are covering this bottom section here. You will notice that this Zari is going to rotate towards the double portal whenever they have a free moment, and that's very important. You never want to rotate towards the single side unless you're the healer going to top someone up. If you're a DPS and you've cleared out your lane, rotate towards the double because they are the most likely to be getting overwhelmed, and that's going to help you keep your team on top of everything. Now, while we watch this base defense play out, I'm going to talk about a few items that I've picked up. So Energize is an item that basically the more I auto attack, the more attack speed I'm going to get. It's very handy. The other item I got that I want to talk about is Smite. Basically, every single time I deal damage, there's a chance that I do additional damage as true damage. Now, true damage means that it goes through all defenses, which makes it a pretty dang good option if you want to deal some additional damage. And since Lotus is all about dealing damage to heal people, having that extra damage is really nice, and we definitely are in a damage-based meta. Like, all that matters is how much damage you're doing. If you're not doing damage, what are you really doing? And that's why characters like Biko, who are really just a healing stick, aren't favored right now. It's because it's very hard to justify a Biko when a Lotus can come in and do quadruple the damage. But overall, we can see that one team has already been eliminated, and now we're off to the races. We've got bounties to pick up, and honestly, we're gonna do a very similar route that we did last time. It's just gonna be a lot easier to pull off because we're not gonna have all this trash to clear, but we wanna hit the same objectives for the same reasons. We want items to sell, we want gold to use, and then we're probably gonna go and just clear out as much of the map as we can because we want that experience. You can see we're already level 12, which is kind of huge. It means we're on pace to hit level 13, which is a huge level for I think pretty much every character in the game. But you can see here we're back to the gold horn and we're gonna do the exact same thing we did last time. Now I guess while we're doing this horn again, I can start to talk about why Lotus? Why did I choose Lotus? What is Lotus good at? So Lotus's whole thing is basically this Seed of Light mechanic. And you can see that as I throw out abilities, I'm utilizing this Seed of Life. It basically says, with this buff active, everything that I do damage is going to translate into healing on the target. So Lotus's whole thing is juggling this buff. You want to get this buff out on as many people as possible, and you want to use it so that you have as close to like 100% uptime as you realistically can. So now we're gonna burn the Crucible here. The Crucible is basically just hit rock, do damage, and win. I've buffed all of my teammates, and what I like to do on these Crucibles is it gets a little bit dicey. So you can see here I take a pretty big stun, but if I buff up all of my teammates with these Seeds of Life, I can actually make it so that they're stun immune. I fail on that miserably because, didn't monitor the buffs properly. But what's important to note with Lotus is you need to have the Seed of Life active on a character for them to benefit from your ultimate. And the ultimate on Lotus is very bloated. It's a 60-second cooldown. It gives everyone a little bit of a shield, but more importantly, you become stun immune, and with that stun immunity becomes an auto attack increase. Now you can see here we're starting to basically prioritize things differently. We've done all the objectives that we realistically need to do. The only other objective that I'd like to see would probably be the purple gauntlet in the top left. But what's more important to us at this point is finding Secret Shop. And you can see here we're fanning out a little bit to try and uncover the map that we haven't explored yet and clear out more of that map so that we can find Secret Shop. Secret Shop has the most impactful items in it, generally speaking, and at least in my case, the item that I'm looking to pick up would be called Stunlock. Now, at this point, Stunlock is not as broken as it was when it was first released in the first day, those first hours, but Stunlock is still an item that I enjoy picking up on Lotus, just because I find that the boss damage can be nice, and on this map, there's nothing else that I'm particularly interested in grabbing, besides maybe Inspiration, but overall, I have plenty of gold, and since we're here, we're going to do the Loom over time objective because I don't think this is going to take us very long. But overall, I don't know if this is necessarily worth doing, but I'm not going to regret doing it. Now we can see the shades falling low. They're running away from the flower. They probably don't realize that that's actually a friendly flower and it would heal them, but that's fine. And overall, we're just going through this. As I watch this back, because I'm obviously doing a cover as I'm going through this gameplay, just I have a note to go through this. I actually think that we were way better served just skipping this. We are already in first by such a commanding amount. We're going to compete very well on the second Loom Rush. I don't think there's any point to us doing the Loom Generator. But overall here we can see this elite. This is the elite that I find the most annoying to play against. It drops the giant healing puddle on the ground, and that healing puddle heals all enemies, which can make it a little bit awkward to take everything down. Overall, at this point in the game, we are level 12, we're almost level 13, so taking it down shouldn't be the biggest issue for us to face. We have lots of items, but we can see here we proc it, we're dealing the damage, it's healing it up, but once that green puddle goes away, we'll be able to burn it down before the next puddle comes up, and it just kind of melts in front of us. What I do want to note is, like, even if you don't need to get these items, at this point in the game, you should be clearing out all of the elites and everything, because at the very least, those giant purple items are going to sell for 750 gold, which is a huge boon. You can see here, no one on our team was going to use Harmony, so I'm just going to sell it, get my gold, and then get Stunlock online. It's a very nice thing for you to be able to do. But overall, that's that, and we're gonna go to the second Loom Rush. So for this Loom Rush, we basically need someone to be standing in the middle at all times. This is one of the Loom Rush objectives where it feels pretty okay to have a tank. We have a bunch of squishies and we are taking a lot of damage. You can see here the Kane actually goes down because he stayed in the middle for too long, and I actually can't heal them if they're in the middle. Now, what I'm looking to do here is to basically heal everyone up and get my ultimate out onto as many people as possible. So I'm looking at towards the Kane. I'm gonna try and get my Seed of Life onto the shade here, and then I should be ulting to go and get that shield and that attack speed buff out. Now, as I see that I'm not doing this, I'm wondering what's going through past Keltick's brain, because this would have been the perfect opportunity to go and send that shield out. The attack speed buff would have been nice. So I'm trying to think, like, why wouldn't I have done that? And honestly, the answer is it's just a misplay. There's no shame in that. That's part of the reason I like watching these back, is it like shows me what I could be doing better. So this is the exact same strategy we used last time. One of the DPS is going to cover each of our lanes, and then we're going to basically stall as long as we can and hope that we aren't the ones that suffer the most. I can see the Kayn is getting low, but I can also see the Shade is now getting low. So I'm going to toss a healing flower out and then sprint back towards the Shade, who's getting lower all the time. The Zari goes and flexes towards the Kayn, which I don't necessarily like. That's a long rotation for them to make to a solo lane, but overall it's going to be all right. And you can see there, this is the enemy that probably bothers me the most. These giant, like, walkers, I'm going to call them, basically just jump towards the core if there's nothing directly contesting them. It's very frustrating, and it's not like the most entertaining thing in the world when all of a sudden, like, you've done a strong rotation, you're feeling good about yourself, and then magically it jumps on top of the core. Those enemies hurt the core. Every slam they do does like 20 health to the core, and the jump itself does like another 15. You want to keep them away, and the fact that there's nothing that stops them from just like power jumping onto your core is a frustration point. So now we're prepping for the boss here. The big thing that I'm switching is I'm taking a Rage Pool, which is a deployable 30% attack speed buff, and I'm switching it out for my baseline slight attack speed buff. This is going to give us more control, and the Rage Pool, although it doesn't stack, does help my team by placing that deployable on the ground. Now, this is Thrashclaw. I've talked about him before. The big thing about Thrashclaw is you just want to do as much damage as possible. Rage Pool is going to help that, and you just want to dodge the mechanics. You can see the red circles tell us ice beams are coming, but I've covered Thrashclaw in quite a bit of detail in other videos, so I'll link those as well, and I'll leave it up to you if you want to go and discover like how this full boss fight works, but I will use this opportunity to talk about how easy Lotus makes it. So we're all going to be stacking on top of this objective together. We can see Shade is not here, which is a little disappointing and slowing us down quite a bit, but even if we were on the red, Lotus just kind of sits back, relax, and heals everyone through whatever damage is coming through. This is if you're on medium difficulty or hard difficulty. Between the E ability and the W ability, you're going to be able to heal through pretty much everything. So now you can see the first Ice Beam is coming out. It almost insta-kills our Shade, but they get away with one. And luckily they have that Seed of Life, so I'm able to kind of keep them healed up here. It's interesting that the Shade is not trying to get behind the boss. Shade does more damage if they are doing the back strikes, and then I'm able to jump out of that big swing. The Zari was not as fortunate as me, but I was able to get out of that to not take the damage. And then we got another beam coming out, and it's basically just rinse and repeat. We're into the second intermission now, which is the same as the first. You can see we're very handedly ahead here, and it's just going to be a rinse and repeat. And if I skip ahead here, and just so that everyone has like something as a bit of a reference point, here is the end game statistics with all of the damage that we all did, and overall, good game. So if you made it to the end of this video, I have a very important question for you. What characters or style of videos do you want to see me take this series towards? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do my best. But if you want to keep learning Evercore, there should be a video on your screen for you to go check out, and you have yourselves a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.